I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Quick blog here on the current status of the pre-sale market, because I always get people that will email me or Twitter direct message me on what is my opinion on pre-sales. Well, if you've been watching my blog for the past 10 years here or so, you know that I don't do a whole lot of work in pre-sales. You know, the pre-sale window, as I've often said here, opens and closes. And, you know, back 10, 12, 13 years ago, the pre-sale market back then was night and day to what it was now. The pre-sale market back 10, 12, 13 years ago was pretty good, because back then the developers were giving you an incentive to buy pre-sale, and for good reason. You could buy the home and you could purchase it with 5% down. That's all it took. The remainder wouldn't be due until completion generally. Or at the most, you would have a 5 and a 5, so 10% down, and the balance due at completion. The lag times between the time you bought the unit pre-sale and the move-in time was generally much less than it is now, half, I would say. You could, if you decided and your circumstances change, you could sell that unit as an assignment and put it on the MLS with no fees or charges. That's totally gone now. Developers now will not let you put it on the MLS because they hold back units and they don't want the competition later on. So you have to do what we call a pocket deal or a private listing, which is very difficult to sell. And now they want a lift. They want a percentage of your profit, and they're going to charge you another $5,000 for administration work. So they've got your hand in your pocket. That didn't used to be the case. You could sell it as an assignment. They didn't take anything, and it was a $500 transfer charge for the contract. So it's night and day to what pre-sales were even just a decade ago. Now, for the most part, pre-sales now are priced at or even above, when you consider the GST, what tangible product is at. The lag times from the time you buy the pre-sale to the time you actually get the keys are getting longer and longer. I know of one in Yaletown here that is currently under construction. This building was pre-sold 4 years ago. Now, they had some issues. They had some issues with some water, I believe, ingress coming into the pit after they dug it out. So there were some engineering issues with this, which they overcame, but that delayed the project about a year, which isn't uncommon. These things are always getting delayed. You know, by the time these people get the keys on this thing has got to be pushing 4.5 years. That is a long time. Anything can happen in that period of time. So the lag time here from the time you buy it to the time you move in is probably double what it used to be 10 years ago. Also, if you did change your mind and want to sell it, as again, you cannot put it on the MLS. So I've got a number of people right now who are in pre-sales in downtown Vancouver, and one in Mount Pleasant, two in Mount Pleasant actually, that it's under construction. They've approached me and said, hey, you know, circumstances have changed. We want to sell it. Does it make sense to sell it now? And I always tell everyone the same thing. No, it doesn't. Trying to sell it as an assignment now on a private deal, and I can't put it on the MLS, plus all the fees you've got to pay the developer. All these parties have done quite well on these, I might add. They've bought them, and the market has risen for them here. So they've got some gain in here. But the best plan is to take possession of it, unfortunately pay the 5% GST, but at least now we can list it as a tangible unit, we can stage it, and I can put it on the MLS, of course. So that is, for the most part, depending on when you bought these pre-sales, the way to go. But overall, as you guys know, generally I'm not all that bullish on pre-sales. Now, I have had a couple of pre-sale sales this year, one out in Burnaby, Brentwood, and one out in Coquitlam, Lougheed. And they can make sense for certain buyers. They can, because one of the attractions is these guys weren't quite ready to move in yet. So it's a layaway program. It's 5% now, 5% in another 60 days, another 5% in 150 days. So it's kind of a layaway program. And for some people, one of my buyers in Brentwood, you know, he's living at home right now, isn't really looking to move in on his own until he's finished school. So, hey, in some cases, you have your choice of the units, the direction, and everything else. Okay, it can make sense in a certain price category. And I should tell you, these were, all of these three were under $475K. So they're in the lower price category. But above that, in Vancouver, for instance, buying a $2 or $3 million pre-sale, I would suggest most people just wait. Wait until the building's complete. If you really want to be in that building, once it's completed, there'll be all kinds of listings in there. You can take your choice. As a matter of fact, they can be pretty good buying opportunities because you get a flood of listings. You might have 10 or 15 listings in the building, and you can kind of play them all off each other. I just had a sale in Brentwood on a recently completed building, really beautiful building, just east of Boundary. And this was a junior one-bedroom, about 520 square feet, high floor, 37th floor, with parking. We picked this up for $515, no GST. I wrote in the contract that the seller was responsible for it. Double dipped on the GST, of course. But good value. At the time when we bought it, there was about 9 listings in this building. So you can kind of play them all off each other and get a pretty good buy on these. And here it is. It's brand new. Nobody's lived in it. It's tangible. You can look at the appliances, open the cabinets, go down to the fitness center. I think for the most part, that is the way I've always suggested people go. Now, it can make sense again, finally, on a pre-sale is, say it's a building, it's right by your work, it's in a prime area that you want to be in, then sure. If you want to buy it, if it's maybe a little bit lower priced unit out in a Brentwood or a Low Heat, and you want to wait the 3 years, sure, it can make sense for certain people. But for the most part, especially for downtown Vancouver, I would suggest people just wait. First off, look at tangible product, because the first thing is you don't have to pay the 5% GST. But there's a lot of advantages to buying tangible product. You can only go so far buying off a brochure from the developer. It doesn't give you the true story, what the parking space is going to be, where it's located, the actual finishings. I know they do display suites, but things change, and you have no clue really about when your actual completion date is going to be. As people know, when you buy a pre-sale, you're going to get a disclosure statement that's going to be about 150 pages thick. All the advantages you have to remember are in the developer's favor. Everything. They've got every angle covered. And there'll be an outside date there. They'll tell you completion is summer of 2022. But you read the fine print there, and the outside date, that might be summer of 2024. So in my experience, pretty much all these pre-sales that have been sold with an estimated completion date have been pushed well back. And a lot of that has to do, recently with COVID. There's a shortage of labor, skilled labor in the Lower Mainland for construction and everything else. But overall, what I would say is if someone's interested in a pre-sale, what I usually do with them is to say, sure, let me take a look at it. But what I always do is I will send them some listings. They don't have to be old. They could be 1 or 2 or 3 years old in that area that are tangible. Let's look at those first. And then, hey, if you really want to be in this building, if it's special, let's say they have a spectacular fitness center like this one had in Brentwood that my guy really liked, then sure, it can make sense to buy the pre-sale. But let's look at tangible product first, because you are paying a premium for that pre-sale. The shiny and new, the layaway program, and then the 5% GST. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.